Milla Jovovich, at age 50, is not just an action star, but a global icon of resilience and versatility. With a career spanning more than 3 decades and more than 20 standout film roles in blockbuster hits like The Fifth Element, where she embodied the immortal sci-fi icon Lilu, and especially the Resident Evil series, where she led 6 films as Alice, grossing over $1.2 billion worldwide, making her the most iconic female action hero of the 21st century. Beyond screen success, Milla was a highly sought-after supermodel from her teenage years, gracing the covers of prestigious magazines like Vogue, Cosmopolitan, and Elle, and serving as a face for top brands such as French Connection, Levis, and Tommy Hilfiger. She even released an album titled The Divine Comedy, showcasing her musical talent and artistic sensitivity, which earned high praise from critics. Throughout her film career, Milla has received numerous awards, including the Women's Image Network Award and Saturn Award, while also being honored on lists of Hollywood's most powerful female heroes, becoming an inspiring role model for young actresses, particularly in action and sci-fi films. Her roles not only prove her acting talent, but have also helped define standards of female empowerment, strength, and independence in an industry full of fierce competition and harsh pressure. But behind that spotlight lies a journey filled with pain and challenges, where Milla endured a childhood marked by loss, bullying, and feeling adrift after moving to America. With her father imprisoned and her mother struggling to provide, she began modeling at 11 years old, earning a living instead of being protected, facing the brutal pressures of the fashion industry, feeling treated more like a product than a person, and going through profound personal traumas such as an impulsive marriage at 16 that ended in divorce, followed by the deep sorrow of having an abortion in adulthood, leaving lasting emotional scars that could never be erased. Yet it was precisely those losses, that loneliness, and the injustices in her life that forged an iron will and extraordinary endurance in her, enabling Milla to overcome every obstacle, stand firm in the cutthroat world of Hollywood, and turn each wound into strength, gradually shaping the image of a female hero who is both powerful and sensitive, proving that not every victory comes from luck sometimes. Simply surviving and rising after every suffering is the greatest triumph of all. If Milla's story has touched your heart, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the untold secrets of her life. Born in Kiev as a little girl, Milla Jovovich had to leave the land of her birth, abandon the familiar streets and hazy childhood memories to follow her mother in immigrating to America. Carrying only scant belongings and a still tender heart, she stepped off the plane as a stranger child in a vast city where every gaze felt alien and every language sounded foreign. Unable to speak English, Milla had to learn to read people's faces, interpret looks, guess emotions, and find her own place in a world she never belonged to. In those first days, while peers laughed and ran around the schoolyard, Milla stood apart, quietly watching and struggling to pronounce her first words, never sure if she got them right. Every mistaken phrase, every doubtful glance from others felt like an invisible knife, carving deep feelings of loneliness and displacement into the mind of a girl who had just left her homeland. Bullying came not only from classmates, but sometimes from careless adults, distant stares, and curt words that made her feel she belonged nowhere. That pain went beyond isolation and extended to the family shock when her father, Bogdan Jovovich, faced legal troubles and was eventually imprisoned. That first collapse of trust left a deep wound in Milla's soul, the realization that the people she loved most, the ones meant to protect and guide her, could abandon her at any moment. Her mother, Galina, had to shoulder everything amid worries about food and shelter, raising her child while battling the hardships of a new life. But sometimes her mother's absence, busyness, and exhaustion left Milla feeling abandoned alone in this vast and harsh world. Her childhood was no longer safe. There was no true home, where she could drop all defenses and be loved without anticipating fear. Every step on America's wide sidewalks reminded her of the lost streets of Kiev, of incomplete memories, and of a world she was never part of. The haunting sense of having no place to call home sank deeply into her mind, turning every room, every classroom, every neighborhood into a challenge to conquer. On lonely nights, Milla lay in bed listening to distant traffic and imagining a warm home she had never held. People she could fully trust. Trust in security things most children take for granted became luxuries for Milla, illusions she had to create for herself. Those early experiences, though harsh, began forming a strange inner strength and ability to self-protect, be independent, and survive in an environment she never belonged to. But that very strength came with unrelenting loneliness, a feeling that never fades, reminding her that no matter how successful she became later, part of her childhood would always remain across the ocean, in strange streets, in dreams she once thought were home. Even when she later stepped into the worlds of fashion and Hollywood, those memories of a stolen childhood followed Milla like a ghost, reminding her that fame could never replace the feeling of safety and unconditional love. It was those very losses, those childhood voids, that built her endurance, determination, and ability to stand firm against every challenge she would face throughout her life, making her not just an icon of beauty or action strength, but a living testament to overcoming adversity and turning pain into power to keep moving forward, no matter how unhealed the wounds remain. Before she could even recover from the loneliness and pain of a childhood torn away, Milla Jovovich had to step into the adult world with feet still too small and a heart still too young. At 11 years old, her mother brought her to fashion shoots, where every gaze saw her not as a child, but as a product, to be posed, controlled, and sold. Each time Milla stood before the camera, she lost the right to dream, the right to make mistakes, the right to cry or laugh naturally like a little girl, and instead had to follow every gesture, every look, every angle preset by adults. The feeling of being viewed as an object rather than a person seeped into every movement, forcing Milla to learn to hide her confusion, to smile when her body was exhausted, to control her emotions to fit the lens while not disappointing her mother. Working to earn money instead of being protected became part of daily life. While peers played and ran in the schoolyard, Milla had to learn to stand on her own, provide for herself, and face the world with hardened eyes. She learned to spot those who might exploit her, to avoid that on the outside she was a fashion goddess, the light on magazine covers, outfits and poses admired by millions. On the inside, she still felt lonely, trapped in a nameless void where no one truly saw her. They only saw the image everyone wanted her to become. The feeling of being seen but not understood haunted her every day. People praised her figure, her smile, her confidence on the catwalk, but no one heard the quiet sighs, the tears she hid in the dressing room. No one knew the price she paid in sweat, bruises, and sleepless nights to maintain that perfection. Milla became a celebrity, but at the same time became invisible, because no one cared about her as the child once lost in a strange country. Invisible because no one understood the loneliness and insecurity that had followed her throughout her childhood. The pressure between her public image and her real self turned every day into an endless performance. Even standing amid the lights, smiles, and applause, Milla still felt empty. She wondered if anyone could ever recognize her true self, if anyone could understand the pain, the loneliness, and the memories stolen from her childhood. Fame did not bring freedom. It bound her to an image she did not fully own. She was seen, but not understood. She was praised, but no one knew the silent sacrifices, the losses, and the wounds that had forged the resilient woman the world was admiring. On those long nights after photo shoots or shows, Milla often sat alone in her room, staring at herself in the mirror, asking, that 11-year-old girl, the girl who once sold knockoffs on the street, The girl lost in a foreign land, will she ever truly be seen and loved? Those questions found no answers, but it was that very emptiness and the feeling of being trapped between two worlds, the image and the self, that forged in Milla an extraordinary inner strength. She learned to stand firm, to master her image while still preserving the real person inside, to live under others' gazes without letting herself be erased. And that strength would become the foundation for Milla to move forward through the bigger upheavals of her life, from love to career, from pain to triumph, until she became a living symbol of resilience and the ability to overcome every adversity. Before she could even enjoy the sense of freedom in the spotlight, and with loneliness already a familiar companion, Milla Jovovich, only 16 years old, made the decision to marry, a impulsive step, but also a way for her to seek the safety she had never felt. Marriage at that time was not mature love, not a choice based on understanding or grown emotions, but a temporary escape, a way to run from the pressures of youth, from the public's eyes, and from unhealed childhood memories. She believed that stepping into a home, having a man by her side, would give her support, a place called safe. But reality only exposed the lack of foundation and the immaturity of that decision. She was not mature enough to understand that marriage is a long journey, one of sharing and empathy, not just an escape from herself. Just a few months after the wedding, the ignorance and impulsiveness of youth quickly surfaced. Small conflicts escalated, misunderstandings could not be resolved, and the pressure Milla carried from her past caused the marriage to collapse swiftly. She realized that running away was not the solution, that no one could fill her inner void with a hasty relationship. The feeling of abandonment, already deeply rooted from her childhood years, repeated itself once more. But this time, it was not just parents or friends, but someone she had trusted to find protection. This collapse forced Milla to face the truth. For the first time, she could not find peace by fleeing, that all true safety had to be built from her own inner strength and resilience. In the long nights after the marriage ended, Milla sat alone, eyes staring out the window, feeling loneliness deeper than ever. She told herself that hasty decisions could not replace the lost childhood, could not heal the deep emotional scars. Tears fell quietly, but they were not weakness. They were realization, lessons about life, about not being able to escape herself and her past. It was this painful experience, though tragic, that forged in Milla a new inner strength. The strength to stand on her own, to find her own path, to understand that all future success and relationships had to be based on maturity, conscious choices, and the ability to face pain rather than run from it. Those days became a turning point in her journey of growth. Milla began to recognize the value of independence, to listen to herself, and to build an inner foundation strong enough to face the next challenges in her career and personal life. Though loneliness still followed closely, this time it was no longer a crushing weight, but a motivation for Milla to become even more resilient, to turn every wound into strength, and to gradually become the woman the world would remember, not just as a screen heroine, but as a symbol of overcoming every adversity and pain, despite past losses and failures. Stepping into adulthood, Milla Jovovich entered Hollywood with the role of Lilu in The Fifth Element, a turning point that transformed her from a girl trapped in the public eye into a global phenomenon. The whole world suddenly looked at her, admired and marveled at her otherworldly beauty, unique presence, and extraordinary acting skills. The lights, cameras, applause, and fashion magazines turned her into the sci-fi icon everyone remembered by name. Yet that spotlight, as dazzling as it made millions of fans believe she had found her place, could not bring the peace Milla had always craved. Hollywood opened opportunities, doors that an immigrant girl had only dreamed of. But it was also there that loneliness, displacement, and the pressure to be perfect multiplied many times over. Milla quickly realized that standing at the top did not mean being seen as her true self. In every shoot, every action scene, every magazine appearance, she had to become the perfect version the world expected. Lilu, Alice, the female hero, icon strong, indomitable, flawless. On the outside, she shone, drawing attention and praise. On the inside, she still felt empty, directionless, lost in a world where her image was always perfect, but no one truly understood the real person. Her career exploded. Fame, money, Hollywood, with all its lights, magazines, and fame, turned her into an icon the world needed. But it could never bring her the safety or heal those old wounds. The constant need to appear strong became an invisible burden where she was not allowed to cry, not allowed to yield, not allowed to show weakness. Milla had to learn to balance the character on screen with her real self, to stand firm against every challenge, to transform the inner strength forged from childhood losses into the energy needed to perform action scenes. Trapped in the warrior persona, Milla faced a paradox. Audiences saw strength, perfection, and courage, but no one knew that beneath that armor was a person still hurting, still lonely, and still learning to confront her past. It was those very wounds, the pain she hid in the gym, backstage, and in empty nights that tempered her extraordinary endurance and relentless fighting spirit. Every time she completed a dangerous scene, every time she pushed through exhaustion or pain, Milla did not just finish the role, she affirmed her ability to survive, to stand on her own, and to turn silent suffering into strength to keep moving forward. Throughout this period, Milla learned that becoming an icon was not a choice, but a responsibility to herself, to her characters, and to the millions of viewers watching her. Every move, every punch, every action sequence carried the story of the little girl once abandoned, of a stolen childhood, and of the woman who turned all those injuries into weapons for survival and conquest of the world. And it was that very resilient, strong on the outside, fragile on the inside, that transformed Milla Jovovich into an icon not only of action power, but also of overcoming adversity, facing pain, and standing firm despite every loss and challenge life threw at her. Once Milla Jovovich became a global action icon, she no longer had the right to rest or temporarily set aside the responsibilities that fame placed on her shoulders. Work was non-stop, scene after scene, ad contracts, photo shoots, events, and interviews all flowed without pause, like an endless loop she had to survive inside. Her body gradually grew weary, her shoulders bearing the weight of entire films and the persona audiences expected, her mind stretched tight like a string, always forced to maintain the perfect smile, sharp eyes, precise walk. The line between role and real person blurred. Alice or Lilu were no longer just characters but became part of her life, an image she had to carry everywhere, even in her private room, when no one was watching. When she was so exhausted she felt on the verge of collapse, Milla lived in a harsh cycle: work, endure, continue. Every risky stunt was not just a physical test, but a mental one. Jumps from rooftops, relentless martial arts sequences, dangerous chases all demanded perfection, resilience, turning every ache and fatigue into power to go on. Time to rest barely existed. Every free minute was filled with training, preparing for the next scene, or maintaining her public image. She learned to endure silently, to swallow the pain inside, and to stand firm even when her body was exhausted and her mind strained to the breaking point. Success, something everyone desires, began to become an unavoidable burden. Every new contract, every next film installment, every title or award reminded Milla that she could not stop, could not be weak, could not live for herself. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw not just a famous actress or supermodel, but a person enduring invisible pressures from the world around her. The lights, cheers, and praise could not soothe the emptiness and simmering tension in her heart. In the late nights, when everyone else slept, Milla was still in the gym or rereading scripts, preparing for the early shoot the next day, telling herself she had to keep going, had to be perfect, had to live up to the image the public believed in. But each time, she felt herself wearing down, body aching, sleep fitful, spirit drained. The feeling that success came hand in hand with burden forced her to accept that nothing was free. Fame, money, awards, and spotlight always came with silent pain. Quiet sacrifices only she understood. Yet it was precisely in these seemingly unbearable trials that Milla forged extraordinary endurance and iron will. She learned to turn fatigue and pressure into motivation, pain and loneliness into energy for scenes, to stand firm under millions of eyes and to maintain the flawless presence everyone expected. The endless cycle of work, endure, continue became a lesson in perseverance and endurance, where Milla proved that true strength is not the ability to never tire, but the ability to get up and keep going, even knowing every step is hard and every step is paid for with sweat, tears, and unseen silent wounds. With each passing year, the burden of success did not break Milla. Instead, it forged her into a living symbol of resilience. On the outside, audiences saw a perfect, agile, indomitable female warrior. On the inside, Milla remained a woman who lost her childhood, endured loneliness and pain, but learned to turn all those experiences into strength, to keep moving forward, to keep living, and to keep inspiring millions around the world. As the relentless spotlight and pressure of Hollywood piled onto her shoulders, Milla Jovovich began to feel the mounting stress and anxiety more acutely. Every scene, every training session, every ad contract, every event felt like heavy stones pressing on her soul, making her heart beat faster, her breath quicker, and the sense that she was gradually losing control of her own life. The accumulated pressure came not only from external demands, perfect body, smile, walk, and demeanor, but also from within, from her own expectations, from stolen childhood memories, from years of overwork, and from the failures and losses she had endured. Milla began to fear becoming a mother, like her own, a woman always busy, always stressed, always sacrificing herself, yet never finding peace in life. That fear, combined with the harsh professional pressures, created inner conflict, part of her craved success. In her journey filled with countless challenges and pressures, Milla Jovovich faced an event that no words can fully describe. The experience of an abortion, a painful loss both physically and spiritually. This was not just a moment of bodily endurance, but a profound shattering of her soul, where the pain, seemingly invisible, weighed so heavily it nearly brought her to her knees. The feeling of losing a part of herself, a fragment of a soul that never got to form, made Milla acutely aware that nothing in this world could ever fill that void. In the months that followed, the pain did not fade but sank deeper, seeping into every moment, every breath, every gesture, making the entire world around her feel distant and empty. Depression began knocking gently but relentlessly, turning days that were already packed with shoots, events, and work into something burdensome. Milla learned to hide her pain behind a perfect smile and flawless eyes. But inside, her soul was continually torn apart by thoughts of loss, of youth, and of opportunities she never got to live. Unable to fully share this pain with the world, she felt isolated, as if everyone only saw the indomitable Alice on screen and never the real girl, Milla, struggling in the shadows, fighting to stand amid unrelenting grief. This moment, this shattering of body and spirit, was a turning point Milla had never faced before. She had to confront head-on the feeling of losing control and helplessness, to look at herself without escape or using work to deceive. On those long nights, lying in the quiet room, with only the clock ticking and her heartbeat, she felt the cracks in her inner self clearly, fragments of emotion breaking apart and painful memories resurfacing, reminding her that the stolen childhood, broken relationships, and every pressure from fame had never left her but now converged in a single moment, that made her feel like a completely different person, almost unrecognizable to herself. In the days and months after the event, Milla had to learn to stand firm amid chaos and loneliness, to breathe through each minute and hour, and to find quiet spaces in life she could lean on. Her career continued to demand appearances on screen, dangerous action scenes, but every step on set, every jump, every fight was overlaid with a layer of silent pain, forcing her to summon every ounce of mental strength to complete the task. In this moment, the Alice icon was no longer just a role, but became part of Milla's survival mechanism. Stand firm. Do not fall. Despite the extreme pain only she truly understood. But it was precisely from this agonizing event that a new inner strength began to form. Milla realized that pain cannot be erased, but can be transformed into motivation to keep living, to sustain her career, to seek the love and peace she had always craved. This experience taught her endurance, self-reliance, and how to rise even when the feeling of being completely broken overwhelmed her. And though the moment that shattered her was utterly tragic, it also became the turning point that opened the path for Milla to learn how to turn grief into strength, loss into survival ability, and become an icon not only of on-screen power, but of overcoming adversity in real life. In the months that followed, as studio lights still shone and audiences still marveled at her action sequences, Milla carried that deep pain within her, quietly turning it into energy to keep moving forward, to keep fighting herself, and to keep proving that even when wounded, isolated, or lost, a woman can still stand firm, still become an icon, and still survive every upheaval life throws at her. After the painful event Milla Jovovich had just endured, a silence enveloped her life, so profound that no external light seemed able to pierce through. She withdrew quietly in her room where no one could see, where only memories, emotional wounds, and her own heartbeat remained. No more constant photo shoots, no more scenes demanding perfection, no more admiring gazes from millions forcing her to smile as the Alice or Lilu persona. Instead, Milla had to face the unavoidable pain directly, the void she had once tried to fill with work, fame, and the challenges Hollywood imposed. Each long night passed. She heard her own breathing, her heartbeat reminding her that everything could no longer be hidden, every loneliness and loss laid bare in her mind. In this silence, Milla no longer chased fame as before. Contracts, shoots, events, interviews, all became meaningless compared to having to look at herself, to feel the pain, to learn to live with it. This was the first time, after years of throwing herself into work and persona, that she was forced to stop, to breathe, to look back at her entire life, from the immigrant days, stolen childhood memories, failures and broken relationships, to early fame and Hollywood pressure. Everything converged in this silence. Milla realized that what she had once run from, hidden, dissolved into perfect smiles and extraordinary action, now stood starkly before her, forcing her to confront it, to accept it. Loneliness became clearer than ever. Even under the dazzling lights of the entertainment world, even with millions knowing her name, Milla still felt like a stranger in her own life. She remembered the lost streets of Kyiv, moments of childhood never lived, lonely nights as a teenager learning to survive on her own, and every time she thought success could fill that void, but it could not. Every light, every praise, every admiration only highlighted the loneliness and emptiness she had never found a way to fill. In the silence, Milla began a process of self-healing. She learned to face pain without running, to feel herself without relying on others' gazes, to stand firm without needing to be perfect, to accept that parts of her childhood and happiness lost could never be reclaimed, yet she could still live, still love, still keep moving forward. This quiet moment was a crucial turning point. It marked the first time Milla truly looked straight at her past, straight at herself, and realized that strength does not come only from success, fame, or roles, but also from the ability to survive, to endure, and to rise even after the deepest wounds. That silence also helped Milla understand that career and spotlight were not everything. She began thinking about her true values, about relationships, family, and things she had missed chasing persona and fame. She realized that to become a complete woman, an icon not only of action strength, but of mental resilience, she had to learn to accept pain, acknowledge loneliness, and use all the wounds she had endured to build herself rather than hide or avoid them. And in this silence, Milla Jovovich began to see a small ray of light. Though the pain never disappeared, though loneliness remained, she was still alive, still moving forward, and still capable of turning losses and wounds into inner strength. This was the moment when Milla not only learned to stand firm, but also began to see that her most painful experiences, stolen childhood, Hollywood pressure, failures and losses had shaped the person the world would remember. A brave female warrior, a resilient woman, a living symbol of overcoming adversity, despite every loss and grief. In the quiet days after the event, Milla Jovovich began looking back at her entire journey, at the stolen childhood, the distant streets of Kyiv, the lonely and insecure months when she first arrived in America, the bullying, isolation, and feeling of having nowhere to belong. She remembered nights lying quietly in a dark room, telling herself she had to learn to survive, to be strong when still too young, and the years throwing herself into work to earn a living instead of playing and being loved like other children. Each memory, each pain that once seemed only to wound her heart more, now appeared to Milla as bricks building her inner strength. She realized that those very wounds had created the endurance, resilience, and iron will she needed to survive every challenge in life. Milla began to understand that endurance did not come naturally, but was forged from a very early age. The hardships she faced from living in deprivation, working at 11 years old, facing fashion industry pressure, to failures and losses in relationships, all taught her to stand firm, control emotions, and protect herself. The past was no longer just pure pain. It became the foundation, the material for Milla to build herself, to turn deep wounds into motivation and strength, to keep moving forward. What once broke her lost childhood, loneliness, abandonments, early broken marriages, and profound personal pain, now became solid bricks holding her upright. Every pain, every failure, every upheaval Milla experienced was a lesson, proof that she could endure and overcome. It was this ability to turn pain into inner strength that made her not only an actress, supermodel, or action icon, but a resilient woman, a living testament to overcoming adversity. In Milla's mind, the images of Alice or Lilu on screen were now no longer just roles. They were reflections of herself, strong, resilient, indomitable, yet full of wounds and experiences. She understood that the turbulent years, the long, lonely nights, the restless nights under dim lights in a quiet room were exactly what had built the foundation for the person the whole world knows today. Those wounds never disappeared, but because of them, Milla knew how to rise, how to survive, how to turn loss and pain into an endless source of strength. This very realization changed the way Milla viewed her life. She no longer saw her childhood and those events as burdens, but as integral parts of her own value. Every time she looked back at the past, she saw that she had endured enough trials to become solid, enough pain to truly cherish life, and enough resilience to keep facing the challenges ahead. What once broke her was also what kept her standing, allowing her to step through loneliness, through fears, and into every new challenge with a strength few could imagine. With this mindset, Milla Jovovich began to feel clearly that pain not only shaped her past, but also opened the path for her future, a path she could walk forward on, with confidence, resilience, and indomitability, despite every wound and upheaval life had and would continue to place before her. This was the moment Milla realized that true strength does not come from spotlight or fame, but from the ability to stand firm in the face of every loss, the ability to turn pain into motivation, and the ability to survive every trial, something that has and will continue to make her a living icon of resilience and courage. In the years following the event and the pent-up pain from her childhood, Milla Jovovich met Paul W.S. Anderson, a filmmaker whose fate seemed destined to enter her life at the exact moment she needed a place called stable. This encounter not only opened a new chapter in her career but, more importantly, brought Milla the first time she felt accepted, not as an icon or a Hollywood product, but as her real self, with all her wounds, hurts, and self-doubts. In Paul's eyes, she saw understanding and respect, a strange feeling she had never experienced before, where she did not have to prove, perform, or turn herself into a perfect image to be recognized. This was a place where Milla could truly breathe, where she could set down the armor that had wrapped her heart for so many years, and for the first time in years, she felt safe. The love she experienced with Paul brought peace, but still fragility. Milla learned that love is not a place to escape or fill missing voids. Love demands sharing, trust, and the ability to open up, things she once feared because of a past full of wounds. At first, she kept a certain distance, afraid that getting too close would lead to abandonment again, to facing the pain that once shattered her. But day by day, gesture by gesture, word by word, and Paul's care gradually broke down those defensive walls. She realized that to truly live, to truly be loved and protected, she had to learn to trust others, to let herself attach without fear. In this relationship, Milla felt a clear difference from everything she had experienced before. Previously, she had to throw herself into work, fame, persona, to be recognized and exist. Every gaze was a challenge, every compliment came with pressure. But this time, love did not demand perfection from her, did not require her to become an icon, and did not remind her of past failures or losses. This was the first place she realized she could be herself and still be loved, accepted, and protected. Day by day, Milla learned to open her heart, to lean on someone else without feeling weak, to share her fears, pain, and hidden wounds without fear of judgment. Those long nights with Paul, those quiet but caring moments, became solid bricks, helping Milla rebuild trust in people, in love, and in her own ability to live fully without running or overprotecting herself. However, this safety remained fragile. Milla knew the past could not be erased. Old wounds still existed, and doubts and fears of abandonment still rose occasionally. But for the first time, she learned that love and attachment are not places to fill voids, but places to strengthen oneself, to create a spiritual harbor she could rely on in moments of weakness. Paul was not just a career companion, but someone who helped Milla realize that true strength does not only come from fighting alone, but also from the ability to open up, to trust, and to lean on others when needed. This moment became a crucial turning point, marking the first time Milla Jovovich found a place called home, not just physically, but where her heart felt at peace. This was the foundation for her to continue facing career challenges, to survive the next upheavals, and to gradually become an icon not only of action strength, but of mental recovery, resilience, and real-life courage. The love and safety she found with Paul opened the door for Milla to learn to love without fear, to stand firm in happiness and trials, and to turn every past wound into inner strength, a strength that has and will continue to help her overcome every adversity in life. When Milla Jovovich became a mother, a new chapter in her life opened. But this time, it was not the Hollywood spotlight or admiring public gazes. It was the subtle, fragile, and deeply responsible light of motherhood, where joy, worry, and fear intertwined in every heartbeat. Facing the fear of loss she had experienced since childhood, Milla realized that now she was responsible not only for herself, but for a tiny being, a part of the world she could protect and give unconditional love to. The fear of abandonment, the fear of losing someone she deeply loved, something her childhood had planted in her mind, was now amplified in a new way. A child completely dependent on her, and she had to learn to love without letting the past dominate, without letting the pain that once broke her cast a shadow, preventing her from fully living her role as a mother. Milla told herself she would not let her children go through the losses she endured, would not let fear or emotional deprivations from her childhood break another young soul. She learned to balance love and discipline, protection and freedom, joy and firmness, present and painful memories. Every day, Milla went through small but meaningful challenges, soothing her child to sleep, preparing meals, teaching first steps, reading bedtime stories. Those seemingly simple moments became great lessons, helping her learn to love without past haunting, to open up without fear of hurt, to be resilient yet soft, to heal without demanding perfection. Milla's healing was not perfect. Fear still existed, reminding her of past losses, pressures, and wounds that never truly vanished. There were nights she woke up, heart tense, worried for her child, for herself, for possible upheavals. But it was those long nights, those moments of weakness, that helped Milla understand that love is not always perfect, but true strength lies in the ability to keep loving, keep teaching, keep standing firm, even when the heart trembles and the spirit wavers. Gradually, Milla began to find new meaning in life. Her child's innocent eyes, laughter, and hugs became medicine, healing old wounds, proof that even though the past had sown pain in her, she could still create a fuller future where love and care bring true value. She realized that strength is not only resilience in action scenes or perfection on magazine covers, but also the ability to love fully, to stand firm in every loss, to turn pain into lessons, and to find happiness amid upheavals she once feared. In this process, Milla not only learned to love her child, but also to love herself. She understood that accepting the past, accepting pain and wounds, and learning to rise after every failure was the most important thing to live and love fully. Those brief moments, peaceful seconds watching her child smile, leaning on her shoulder, taking small steps, became powerful motivation, reminding her that love and strength do not come from fame or success, but from the ability to survive, to be resilient, and to open her heart to love despite lingering fears and wounds. And it was from these experiences that Milla Jovovich gradually turned pain, loss, and pressure into inner strength, learned to stand firm in the happiness she was creating for her child, learned to live with the past without letting it control her, and learned to keep moving forward on her own path, strong and resilient, despite every challenge. This is the journey of a woman learning to love without fear, to trust without hesitation, to turn every loss and wound into strength, to keep living, keep loving, and keep becoming a living icon of resilience, courage, and extraordinary recovery. When looking back at her entire journey, Milla Jovovich realized that her life had never been perfect. From the stolen childhood days, years of isolation and displacement in a foreign country, painful emotional events, impulsive marriages, relentless Hollywood pressure, to profound personal losses, everything left indelible marks. Milla never had a complete childhood, never felt absolute safety, and those voids followed her throughout life. But she also realized that although nothing was perfect, those losses had shaped who she is. A strong, resilient woman who never gives up, no matter how much pressure comes from every side. Milla is not a winner in the traditional sense. She did not have a peaceful childhood. She was not always understood, and not every event ended in spotlight or fame. But she is a survivor. She survived childhood wounds, brutal career pressures, personal losses and pain without ever completely collapsing. Success, no matter how dazzling on screen and in her career, could not erase what had happened. But it was precisely that ability to survive, to keep moving forward and hold herself together through every challenge, that stands as the strongest proof of Milla's inner strength and extraordinary will. Milla's legacy does not lie in her roles, awards, or multi-million-dollar contracts. Her legacy is resilience, the ability to rise after every failure, the strength to turn pain and loss into motivation to keep living and loving. She became a living symbol for anyone who has ever been wounded, for anyone who has ever suffered loss, and for anyone struggling to find themselves in a world full of pressure and trials. Milla proves that victory is not always measured by fame or achievements. Sometimes victory is simply standing up after everything around you seems to have collapsed. The final message from Milla Jovovich's life rings out clear and powerful. Surviving is a victory in itself. She not only survived a stolen childhood, profound losses and upheavals, but she also kept standing firm, kept loving, kept building her life in her own way. Despite every wound, despite loneliness and pain, Milla has proven that true strength is not about avoiding pain, but about learning to rise after it, learning to turn harsh experiences into strength and will, and learning to live fully even without a perfect childhood or absolute peace. And so, when the lights shine on the screen, when audiences marvel at her extraordinary action sequences, when people praise Milla Jovovich's beauty, talent, and success, few know that behind it all is a person who has endured every wound, every loss, and still stands resilient. Her life teaches us that not everyone is given a perfect childhood, but anyone can learn to survive, learn to rise, and learn to turn pain into strength to keep moving forward. In light and shadow, in success and sorrow, Milla Jovovich stands there as living proof of a victory that cannot be measured by fame or money, but by the ability to exist, to overcome, and to keep a strong heart through every challenge life brings. The story of Milla Jovovich is not just the story of a famous actress or a Hollywood action icon, but the extraordinary journey of a human being who overcame every wound, loss, and adversity to stand firm. From the years of a stolen childhood, young Milla had to face loneliness, isolation, and the pressure to survive in an entirely unfamiliar environment after moving from Kyiv to America. Those experiences, though painful and tragic, forged in her a rare endurance and self-reliance. When stepping into the worlds of fashion and film, Milla continued to face the pressure to be perfect, to become the image everyone expected, while still preserving the real person inside. The abortion, the fear of loss, and the depression that followed showed even more that success or spotlight could not heal past wounds. Those painful experiences were what sharpened her will and survival ability. From her relationship with Paul W.S. Anderson, Milla learned to open her heart and trust. From motherhood, she learned to love without letting the past control her. These details, from isolated childhood to peak career and family love-all, show that Milla is not a perfect winner, but a survivor, a living testament to human resilience. The real-life lesson here in the United States is that no matter who has endured a difficult childhood, career pressure, or personal upheavals, what matters is not avoiding pain but learning to rise, learning to turn wounds into strength, and finding value in one's own experiences. Milla's story reminds each person that surviving and continuing to move forward, despite every challenge, is also a victory, and sometimes the greatest strength comes from the ability to stand up after unseen losses. If the story of Milla's extraordinary journey and inner strength has touched your heart, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss other touching stories about people overcoming adversity. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video to explore more survival and resilience journeys you won't want to miss.